This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Welcome to this episode of Forge Daily. I'm your host, Mackenzie Barwell, coming to you May 24th, 2024. Tomorrow, your Forge FC take on the team currently ranked number 1 in the CPL standings, Atletico Ottawa. They have yet to concede a loss with 3 wins and 2 draws. Here to break down tomorrow's match and just talk about Forge FC's form as of late is a good friend of mine and CPL analyst Charlie O'Conner Clarke. So let's just get right into today's episode and our conversation. Charlie, welcome back to the Audio Network. Thanks for making another appearance. I think this is the first of the 2024 season.
Is it? Wow, yeah. No, it's always good, always good. I'm glad to get that first in and hopefully not the last.
Yeah. Oh, believe me. Come on now. Based on how many times you came on last year, I think you can expect this won't be the last you hear from me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've made other friends now, so you've got other people
to
talk to.
You're right, but this is the OG. This is the OG partnership, okay? When I had no one, I had you, Charlie, and I'm never going to forget that.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad that you still have your bobby beard up and active behind you. I got nervous when I didn't see it in the frame right away.
No, it's very important. It's one of my most prized possessions. It's not going anywhere.
Listen, we'll talk about Forge and Atletico. Of course, they play tomorrow, so that'll be the main focus. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about this Wednesday matchup against CF Montreal, because that's a pretty monumental moment, not just for the club, but the league in which you've been covering since 2019. So what were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it was special. It was really special. It was kind of a weird night, obviously, with the 2-hour halftime with the thunderstorm. Yeah. I mean, kind of like, I don't know, the weather just not letting us have our moment properly, but still, it was awesome. It was awesome. And I think Forge did really, really well to kind of come out with their game plan, play that direct football. Kwesi Poku's playing as a number 9 with, obviously Taron Campbell not healthy and Jordan Hamilton maybe not fit to play 90 minutes. So Poku comes in and plays this role, and he was awesome at it. Clearly they had this game plan to try and get in behind that high line and hit in transition, and it worked perfectly with, Malcolm Duncan just firing one up to Kwesi, and he just, has the pace to beat pretty much anybody, and he does, and he's so clever with his footwork to get it over the goalkeeper. And then the second half is just surviving. I looked at the stats, and Montreal, they had 40 crosses in the second half. So that's nearly a cross every minute.
No way. Was it 40?
40. But Forge just won pretty much every ball in the air.
Yes.
Daniel Parra won everything. I think he won 11 duels. It was crazy. It was that kind of defensive effort where
relentless defense. Yeah.
They were weathering 2 kinds of storms that night, right?
I see what you did there. Let's go.
But yeah, Montreal, you could see that they were getting more and more frustrated, and there's that period kind of in the first maybe 20-30 minutes of the second half where they felt really dangerous, and they did score, and it kind of felt, I was really thankful for the away goals rule at that point, because Montreal needed to score 3 times.
Yeah.
So I'm I was a little worried that they were going to score 1 more, but I was kind of, it still felt kind of okay. But then after maybe around the 70th 75th minute, after Bobby brings on Malika Walabi-Belawu to kind of go to a 5 at the back, it didn't feel as dangerous. Forge felt like they were happy to just absorb those crosses and clear the ball and maybe hit one in transition, and it was just kind of a very, very professional and well-deserved result against I know Montreal is in a tough spot at the moment in MLS, and they've lost a bunch of games in a row, but they're still an MLS team. Their budget is 20 times as high as Forge's in terms of their wages. So this is something that Forge have wanted to do for years, for a club that's had so much success in its 6 years as a club. This is something they'd never done before. And they'd come close twice, went to penalties, but the last 2 times they'd been to Montreal, they got battered. It did not go well for them.
They hadn't scored at their stadium going into that game. Yeah,
I think it was 3-0 and then 2-0 last year. for it to be so different this time, for Forge to come in and really boss them, to look like the more confident and the more motivated and deliberate team, is just such a testament to how well they're playing right now. And like, honestly, now that they've done this, they've gotten over that hurdle. Like, there's no reason to think that they can't give whoever they got in the semifinal a good run for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important to make that distinction too, Charlie. You talk about, Montreal going through their own struggles, but at the end of the day, Forge beat an MLS team, and regardless of whether or not they're going through their own, problems, Milty made a good point yesterday at saying Forge is one of them, and they executed the game plan first and second leg of this quarterfinal.
Yeah, over 2 legs is a big part of it too. Like, sometimes you can catch a team on a bad day in a one-legged kind of elimination game, but Forge were the better team over 180 minutes in both stadiums. Like, they absolutely, with every in every aspect, deserve this win and deserve to be in the semifinals.
You made a good point at talking about the 70th minute when I think Malik came on. Maybe, I don't remember if it was Noah that came on a little later or potentially earlier, around the same time.
Yeah.
Have you seen Lord of the Rings?
Obviously.
Okay.
Of course I have.
I don't even know what movie it is or whether or not it's The Hobbit, but when they're in the war and like things are getting a little bit high pressure or like tough, and then they bring in like the elves. Not the elves, but like the other unit.
It's the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah. That's the one.
Gandalf shows up at the top of the cliff, and it's awesome.
Yes.
One of the dopest moments in the
That
100%.
is that. I think it was like Gandalf standing in front of like the rest of the not to say that Malik is Gandalf in this situation.
I know what you mean though. Like, Forge are getting pushed back, they're under pressure, they're feeling rough, and then all of a sudden, the reinforcements arrive. Like, you could see the energy is here. They're like, okay, we're okay. We feel better now. We can do this. And they had to see out the last like 20 minutes of the game, and they did so.
That is the reinforcement that they needed, and I can't help but draw the parallel there because
good one.
That's the visual
really like
I had.
one, yeah.
Okay, Charlie, moving on now. You talked about how well this team has just been playing overall, not only in the Canadian Championship in the regular season, even looking back at CONCACAF and the Chivas matches. I love talking to you about this kind of thing because you have seen this team evolve since 2019, and particularly this year, even my perspective in seeing them last season, I can just sense this overall sense of confidence and just morale, I guess, around the locker room, more so than I did last year. Even the players have talked about feeling this mutual sense of confidence, this cohesiveness within the group. Coach Bobby said that, described it as refreshed. What have you seen this year in particular from Forge that you have not seen in the past, maybe even looking back as far as 2019?
Yeah, I think something that maybe hasn't always been the case there is just how much consistency and clarity there is in this team of how they're playing every week. I mean, they're they've played 8 games in the season. I think they've got 9 players that have started either every game or all but one game. And all 9 players have appeared in every single game. So like, that is a huge thing for this team that they know each other so well. And even a guy who maybe didn't know this team very well, Daniel Parra, comes in and plays. He's started every single game for this team, and like, arguably been Forge's best player to start this season in certain respects. It's so much easier to fit into that team when nothing else around you is changing, right? There's very, very little rotation that they've had to do. They've had players that are very, very good players. Somebody like Noah Jensen, is a little injured to start the season. He's up to fitness now, but still, isn't necessarily starting just because things are going so well and the form is so good in the rest of the midfield. It's like, players have to earn those opportunities. But I think of even a player like Malcolm Duncan, who I don't think anybody really expected to be the daily starting right back for this team, but he's been outstanding. He's played pretty much every minute for Forge this year. He kind of created both goals in Montreal with his long switches of play and his long ball up to Kwesi. Like, these guys are very, very clear in what they have to be doing, and they know the identity so well, and it's just, it must be a fairly straightforward job for Bobby the day before a game to be like, all right, you guys just go do it again, right? Like it maybe one or two changes in the lineup, maybe a little bit of rotation, but for the most part, it's just Forge going about their business and being Forge. I mean, we've always talked about them being this kind of like big orange machine that just goes out and plays to its identity, but I think that's more true than it ever has been this year.
Right. And especially with so many players in good health and form at the same time, that's also been a big topic of conversation. But Malcolm Duncan, I don't think that yesterday in the episode Milty and I did in reviewing the Montreal match, we gave him the credit that he deserved, because looking back at the highlights, you're right. He was the most fundamental part in the build-up before those goals, if not the assist to Kwesi, as you said. So some unexpected, or maybe not, a little bit of a dark horse, I would say, and Malcolm Duncan, especially this year, because as you said, no one really expecting him to start. I want to narrow in on another player, Tristan Borges. It's not a secret he's been outstanding to start the season. So many people have made the comparison to himself in 2019, CPL Player of the Year, one of the best individual performances by the sounds of it this league has ever seen. Why do you think, apart from Borges just generally playing very well, what are you seeing in him specifically that you think has prompted people to make that comparison?
Well, I mean, the first thing to note is that he's healthy, which hasn't really been the case for a few years now. Certainly wasn't the case last year. Tristan is a very, very intelligent footballer, and we've known that. But I think, honestly, I think that the way he's playing now is better and more impressive than it was in 2019, just because, the opposition is so much better, right?
Right, he's being tested more.
For us that were around the CPL in 2019, it was amazing. It was so much fun to watch, but the quality of play was a lot lower than it is now, right? So the players that, for Borges to be putting in similar performances and putting up similar numbers against a league that knows him better and knows how to defend better and has better identities, it's more impressive to me than it was in the very early stages of 2019, when everybody was just kind of figuring out what the football was like in this league. Every team was trying to figure out how they wanted to play, and nobody really knew who the stars were going to be. Because let me tell you, when we tried to think before that season, or tried to guess who the stars in the league were going to be, we were 100% wrong pretty much every time. There's a lot of like articles you can go back and look at from like March 2019, where we'd be like, here's our picks for the Golden Boot or the Player of the Year.
Not accurate.
Oh my god, it's so bad. So embarrassing. Like even our like projected 11s for every team, like not even close.
Really?
But
okay.
But Tristan Borges, like he is, he's kind of settling in. Like back then he was this young kind of upstart dynamo footballer who like comes in and he's just this burst of energy all the time. But now he's just so intelligent. He's got this chemistry with all these other attackers on his team. He can play so many different roles. He's playing a lot in midfield or a more central area this year. And he's just such a good creator, and he's so dangerous at using those spaces, that I think he's really become a much more well-rounded attacker, and I think that's part of the reason that Forge's attack is so dangerous at all times.
Totally. I think it's a combination of things, as you said, and health being the first that you mention. It's so true. I had a conversation with him after practice a couple weeks ago, and I just said, hey, you look great, like even off the field. Like you just seem happy, you have this great aura, you just seem like you're in good spirits, and you're putting everyone around you in a better mood. And let me just say that. And he said, I think it's because I got a taste of what it felt like to be injured and to not be at my peak fitness or, performing to the extent that I know I'm capable of. And I think having that experience in a way kind of made him more grateful for where he's at now and wanting to really capitalize and push his limits. And as you said, potentially perform better than when he did in 2019. Looking at Atletico Ottawa now, we'll shift gears. What have you seen from them so far? Because of course there was a lot of preseason talk about all of these super signings that they have, and they haven't lost yet. I believe they've got 3 wins, 2 draws. Are they as dominant as those conversations suggest that they are? in looking at the highlights where they just played Pacific, winning 1-0, it didn't look too, overwhelming one way or the other,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they're a very good team. There's no denying that. And obviously, they are still in the building stages as a team that has so many new players. It's like there's pretty much any given game there's 5 or 6 players that weren't there last year, still getting their feet wet in this team. They are very, very hard to beat, but they're a much different team than they were last year, where they may, or even the year before when they won the regular season. They are a much more attacking team, and they can score goals. That Pacific game was a weird one where they kind of took advantage of the situation that was given them. Pacific had 3 injuries in the first half.
Right, there's a lot of stoppage too.
Yeah, so Pacific's game plan went out the window immediately. I think Ottawa scored while one of Pacific's players was still on the side of the pitch receiving treatment, just because, you can't fault a team for doing that. That's what happens. You take advantage of the situations, and then they're very professional in seeing out that 1-0 win at Pacific, and that's a top of the table clash, and a Pacific team they have to see again this week in the second leg of their Canadian Championship. But it is it's an Ottawa team that the film from last year will not be much use to Forge or to Bobby Smirniotis. So the games they played against them last year, I don't expect a very similar kind of game. And obviously, the thing is, though, the players that they've brought in are largely players that Forge are very familiar with, not least of which Abou Sissoko, obviously. But even guys like Aparicio and Debrienne and Didic are players that Forge are very familiar with, have played against in the CPL for years now. So, I don't think there's a ton of surprises, but this is a very, very different team, and it's quite a good team as well. So I don't think Forge have any intention of taking it lightly.
Yeah. Familiar faces, new combination, I guess we could say. You mentioned Abou Sissoko. He made the transfer over from Forge to Atletico over the offseason. You've seen plenty of players do this, go to a new team, play their old club. How does that impact a game, and how do you anticipate Abou, his role in impacting tomorrow? Especially having the inside scoop.
Yeah, he's been maybe a more under the radar new addition to that Ottawa team. I don't think a lot of people maybe talked about it as much as they did Aparicio or Didic or players like that, but he's a very important player, and I think he's clearly a player that Carlos Gonzalez likes a lot. He's played him in a lot of different positions. I know at Forge he played most of his time either in central midfield, or actually, at the start of his time at Forge, he plays a right back.
Well, yeah, I saw him in the right wing. Sorry to interrupt, but I did in the starting 11, and I was like, am I messing this up?
No, 100%. He's played out in the wing for Ottawa. He's played as kind of a false 9 striker thing as well at times. So he's played in a lot of different roles, and I think it's something that Bobby knew as well when Abou was at Forge, that he is a player that you can pretty much put anywhere on the pitch, and just because he's got such a good a good head for the game, such good vision, and I think part of it is kind of Gonzalez still trying to find where all of these players fit onto the pitch together, because they have so many good players, but a lot of them maybe naturally play similar positions, so you have to convert a few of them into different roles. And clearly Sissoko is a player who's pretty well equipped to do that. But I would expect him to be part of this team, and probably to be a slightly more attacking role against Forge than he was when he was at Forge.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Forge fans will have eyes for Abou tomorrow. Thank you, Charlie. It's very helpful having another perspective, especially yours. I want to circle back before I let you go to the Canadian Championship, because next week the draw happens for the semifinal. We know TFC and Vancouver FC, they're solidified in the semi as well, but we wait on Atletico and Pacific this time to play in the Can Champs, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So they'll play, and then the draw will happen as to who will play each other and where. What are you hoping the outcome is?
So I'm torn. I'm very torn, because on the one hand, it would be kind of great if TFC and the Whitecaps got each other, and then we're guaranteed a CPL team in the Canadian Championship final. That would be a lot of fun. But I do think that Forge and either Ottawa or Pacific would also love a run at an MLS team over 2 legs in the semifinal. I think if you're Forge, you probably feel like you can take on any of them at the moment. But I think you do probably say that you'd rather face a CPL team and then get the Canadian Championship final against that MLS team when there's only one left, and you're 90 minutes away from winning a trophy. And as Bobby would definitely remind us, getting a CONCACAF Champions Cup spot as well, which is a huge priority for that club. But I mean, either way, we are going to have 2 Canadian Premier League teams in the semifinal. I just hope that we've got one in the final at least.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I'm torn too. At the same time, it would be cool to see TFC and Forge in the semi, but
that would be 2 legs between Toronto FC and Forge would be a lot of fun.
That's what I mean, because then there's a home and away with TFC.
So that would actually be sick. I think there'd be good crowds at both games. It would feel like kind of a derby. Yeah. You know what? That would actually be sick. I kind of like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm converting you.
I kind of like that. I mean, the draw, I think, is probably on, I'm not sure exactly, but I guess Thursday after the second leg. The semifinals don't start for a while, though. Like, I think the first leg is in, like, the second week of July, and the second leg is, like, the last week of August. So it's a little bit stretched out this year, but it's kind of nice just not having so much fixture congestion at one time. But it does, when you do feel that energy, you're like, okay, we just got through the quarterfinal. When's the semi? Oh, not for like 2 months. Dang.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right.
But you got plenty of time to think about it and prepare. So
I know. I react this way because it feels like so long, and I'm excited. But at the same time, this many midweek matches through the regular season, especially the beginning, is a little bit insane. But
and we don't even have to play them.
I know. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I'm exhausted just watching them.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Charlie. You'll be hearing from me very soon. I can promise you that.
All right, thanks.
That'll wrap up today's episode. I hope everyone was on the same page as Charlie and I when we got into the Lord of the Rings bit, because I'm still laughing at that and genuinely how accurate it was. So thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to tune into One Soccer tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's a bit of an early match. You can watch your Forge FC take on Atletico Ottawa.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.